Hey, welcome back, Ram fans. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Didn't think I was going to have to come back with another drop so soon, but a few things happening across the NFL and especially regarding the Rams. So I'm going to get into a few things here. And the most significant news, of course, is this story just won't go away. I am sorry for this, but a new turn in the Stafford saga. Tom Pelissero reporting that the Rams have given Stafford's agent permission to talk to other teams. Now, this is what I think is going on here. The Rams, the astute organization they are letting Stafford go out and find out for himself what his market value is, with the hope that he may be a little disappointed and come to his senses perhaps and return to the Rams for another year or two. I think this is going to play out in the Rams' favor, but still not a good story to wake up to. Quite the bummer. I've been sitting on this all day, actually, throughout Saturday, seeing if there's any more developments about it. But this is what I have so far, and it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll find out which teams his agent is speaking to. Maybe not. Maybe that'll all be under wraps, but bears monitoring if you're a Ram fan, and I'm going to stick to my position. I'm still really hopeful, number one, that Stafford returns, and if he doesn't, let's just keep this train moving forward. There will be an answer. Les Snead and Sean McVay will figure it out. And is it the end of the Rams' playoff contention and potential Super Bowl runs for 2 or 3 years? I'm not buying it, especially when you look across the rest of the NFC. A bunch of teams facing issues. It's not just the Rams, and the Rams have so much great young talent. I feel good about this team's future with or without Stafford. Hey, he's going to move on at some point, and at some point the Rams will find their next quarterback. Hey, on the podcast, this is episode 670, and I'm going to talk about a player who wore number 70 real quickly. Offensive tackle Alex Barron. And he was a 6'8", 315-pound tackle out of Florida State. Yes, another Florida State alumni, drafted by the Rams in the first round of the 2000. Well, what year was that? That was the 2005 draft. And he beat out Rex Tucker for the right tackle position, played there for the most part, took over for Orlando Pace a little bit at the end of one year when he went down, but he was a primary starter at right tackle from 2007 to 2008. And then in 2009, Pace was released. Alex Barron took over, and it was not pretty. He never really lived up to expectations or what we had hoped for a 19th overall pick. And then in 2010, the Rams drafted Roger Saffold, and that was the beginning of the end of Alex Barron's time with the Rams, who was eventually traded to the Cowboys. Played 1 year there, bounced around, trying to latch on with a couple other teams, but lots of penalties. One thing I can say about Alex Barron is the Rams' rushing game, SJ39, that was the peak of his years when Alex Barron was there. Very productive, but Alex Barron still left a lot to be desired. And a side note, I did not know this. If I knew it, maybe I forgot, but he is the cousin of Brad Holmes, the Detroit Lions general manager and former official front office guy with the Rams. So did not know that. Alex Barron, Brad Holmes, cousins. And I wanted to talk about some other teams. I mentioned the potential of the Rams, taking a step back with this Stafford situation, and that's probably the case. But what about the 49ers situation, the not-so-frugal 49ers? They are up against it. They better hit this draft really well because they got a bunch of guys that I think they're overpaying. Now, Fred Warner, one of the best linebacker in the league, perhaps, a $29 million cap hit. And I don't know if any linebacker is worth that. Maybe back in the 70s, Dick Butkus, or Ray Lewis or someone like that. The game has changed a little bit, though. Fred Warner is a great linebacker and is a great linebacker for the type of football that's being played now, the type of offenses that teams are running, and the type of linebackers you need. But $29 million, and then George Kittle, a $22 million cap hit, and I don't think there's any tight end worth that much. Period. Brock Bowers may change my mind, but George Kittle at this point, absolutely not. Even Bosa, over $20 million cap hit. Trent Williams getting up there in years. That's being generous. Trent Williams, $21 million cap hit. And basically the bottom line is they are ruining some of these decisions they made and caving to Brandon Ayuk. He's just an $11 million cap hit this year, but then they got the Deebo Samuel situation and Brock Purdy. They're going to have to pay him, and they have all these free agents: Talanoa Hufanga, Javon Hargrave, Travarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw. So they are in, it's a make or break year for the 49ers, not so much as, hey, they should go all in. It's a make or break year for the 49ers in that they could slowly start sliding into irrelevance if they're not careful here. Now, they still have a great roster, but man, I think they've really made some bad decisions. And, the Rams were in the same boat a couple years ago, absolutely. But they wiggled their way out of it. Now we're going to see if John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan can figure it out. So, when you sit here and consider the Rams situation and you worry about their prospects over the next year or two, should Matthew Stafford move on, or eventually he's going to, right? Consider the situation some of these other NFC West teams are in, especially the team that I think is our biggest rival for a divisional championship at this point, the San Francisco 49ers. So let's hope it doesn't turn out well for our friends up north. How about that? And hey, I wanted to mention that Gerald Everett was released by the Bears. He signed a 2-year, $12 million contract last year, finished the season with 8 catches for 36 yards. And I could never really figure out the trajectory of his career. He was decent with the Chargers. I could never quite figure out why the Rams moved on from him. I think it was because we had Tyler Higbee, maybe just a little rich at the tight end position, and we could move on from him. But I thought, he's aside from Tyler Higbee, he's the best tight end we've had. And I never could quite figure it out. And by the way, he's the answer to a trivia question. And I think I offered this question once. Who was the first draft pick of the Sean McVay-led Rams? Gerald Everett. Some other news, the Bengals released defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins, another 2024 signing that went south. He was a 2016 first-round pick. He's 6'2", 305, signed a 2-year, $24.5 million deal last year, and the Bengals are moving on from him. Remember, he played pretty well for the Saints. He's a solid, versatile defensive lineman. And I only mention that because the Rams do need some defensive linemen. I don't know what's going on with Neville Gallimore and Bobby Brown. And, I got some pushback on this idea that the Rams could draft defensive linemen in the 4th, 5th, 6th round to solidify this front. And a couple of people mentioned that, we need studs, we need stars up there. And I disagree with that. I respect that viewpoint. That's the way the Rams did business in years past. But with Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, and these edge rushers we have, we just need a couple of big bodies to help out. Remember we had Marquise Copeland and Greg Gaines back in the day, and some really good players left and right of them. Who'd we have? We had Ashawn Robinson, Aaron Donald, of course, Von Miller on the outside, Leonard Floyd. Marquise Copeland and Greg Gaines were perfectly fine with great players playing beside them. And if you bring in a guy like Rankins, and just as an example, or Greg Gaines, or bring back Bobby Brown, that will suffice. That's the point I'm trying to make. And, You're perfectly welcome to disagree with me. Hey, will I take a superstar nose tackle? Absolutely, but you can't have everything. As I have told my kids in the past, my children, we can afford anything you want. We just can't afford everything. So you got to decide where to spend your money. And I wanted to talk about the Cardinals a minute, the Arizona Cardinals, who had another typical Arizona Cardinal season last year. There were times where they looked like they might be the best team in the National Football League, and then they go into a tailspin. And I think they have really good leadership there. Monty Ossenfort, the GM, I think he knows what he's doing, and he's going to be really aggressive. They have $76 million in cap space, 21 free agents, though. And Ossenfort was quoted as saying, reading off the YouTube channel here, we are going to be active in free agency, but we have to be smart about not only this year's team, but as we build for the future and our own players. So we want to extend. And well, I think every GM probably feels that way. But I have a concern that the Cardinals could really get things turned around. I said that last year, and I'm saying it again this year, but they have some decisions to make. One of them is James Conner. He is an unrestricted free agent, as is wide receiver Christian Kirk. And I still think the biggest problem with the Cardinals, who had one of the best offenses in the league at times last year, I think over the second half of the season, they were, top 4 or 5. They just, there's something in that culture there. I don't know if I should say it's culture, but they just have to get over the hump at some point and learn how to win and learn how to play to win and not to lose. And at some point, you have to think they're going to turn the corner. I just don't know if it's going to be with Kyler Murray or his whoever takes over once he leaves. But they're a team that I like their head coach. I like their general manager. I think they're pointed in the right direction, but I'll believe it when I see it. As far as the win-loss columns go, the second half of the season, that's pretty much what it's about. They just fade every year. And every year there's times where you're watching them and you're going, man, this is a really good football team. And then other times, not so much. Just can't build that consistency and that winning culture there. And maybe they'll figure it out this coming year. Hopefully not. And, the Rams quarterback situation has been in the news. The Vikings quarterback situation is really interesting. They say that J.J. McCarthy is the guy, but they really want to bring back Sam Darnold. And if they can't, well, there's Daniel Jones. And the article I read suggested they may sign Daniel Jones as insurance. And what does that mean for Sam Darnold? He's going to lose a lot of leverage there. But apparently they're rolling with J.J. McCarthy as their quarterback of the future. And that's a team to watch. Could the Vikings could be, a playoff contender next year, or, basically a rookie quarterback taking over there. I don't know. It takes a couple of years sometimes for these guys to figure out the NFL. So do the Vikings take a step back this year? Which quarterback do they roll with as their backup? Kind of a situation worth monitoring for us other NFC teams, because when it comes down to the wild card races, the decisions the Vikings make here at quarterback could be relevant to teams like the Rams. Hey, Zack Martin is retiring. And I remember when the Cowboys drafted him in 2014, everybody was surprised. A lot of people thought they were going to draft Johnny Manziel, and instead they drafted Zack Martin. And there was a lot of criticism for that pick at the time. I remember it clearly. What the heck are they doing? And it was one that Jerry Jones got right. This guy, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time second-team All-Pro, 9-time Pro Bowler. But this is what I'm going to say about Zack Martin, and an offensive lineman that played for the Cowboys all these years, 3-5 in the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, Zack Martin absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame based on this resume. But I have to say, and I whine about this too much probably, but if he had if he had played for the Rams, number one, if he had played for the Rams and they reached the playoffs a handful of times and never got to an NFC championship game, Zack Martin probably would have been named to a couple of Pro Bowl teams, perhaps, maybe not at all, and he'd have no shot at the Hall of Fame. And that's not a knock on Zack Martin because he does belong in the Hall of Fame. It's a knock on the bias, that this favoritism towards teams like the Cowboys and the Steelers and the 49ers. If you're a really, really good offensive lineman, you're going to get recognized. And don't tell me it's about Super Bowls. It isn't. I offer you Zack Martin as evidence of that. And we have a role reversal in New Orleans. The Saints have hired Brandon Staley as their new defensive coordinator. I think that's a good hire. He's going to be working for Kellen Moore, and he was Staley's offensive coordinator when Staley was head coach of the Chargers. So, and I like both these hires. Say what you want about Brandon Staley as a head coach. That was the Peter principle, getting promoted to your level of incompetence. Incompetence is probably kind of harsh, but he didn't get it done. That's not his gig, head coaching. Defensive coordinator, I'd be excited if I was a Saints fan. Both these hires, I think they nailed it. Saints are in a really bad spot, really underwater as far as the salary cap. They got the Derek Carr quarterback contract to deal with, not a good one. But I think these two guys, you could do a lot worse, and I think they're going to make the Saints somewhat competitive. And they come to LA this year, so we will find out. We'll find out just how far along they've come. Don't know where they're going to be on our schedule, when they will be on our schedule, but that'll be a fun matchup. Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley matching wits with Chris Shula and Sean McVay. One to watch for sure. And the Jags hired another Ram, and this one kind of concerns me. Now, they hired Liam Cohen as their head coach. Man, this guy just skyrocketed through the ranks in the NFL. And now they have hired James Gladstone as their general manager, and he was the whiz kid behind the Rams scouting department for like 14, 15 years or something like that. So this is a big loss for the Rams. Now, I don't know the details of the role he played. I know what his job title was, how instrumental he was, but it's got to be a big loss for the Rams. Hopefully they have some guys that have been under his tutelage that are going to be able to step in real quick. And it got me thinking, man, you're in the draft room. You're the Rams. You're in the draft room. Les Snead and Sean McVay. How many teams are there out there where you feel so comfortable picking up the phone and going, "Hey, buddy, let's talk trade"? You got the Packers with Matt LaFleur. Now you have the Saints, Brandon Staley, the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, the Bengals, Zach Taylor, the Falcons, Raheem Morris, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. I don't know if we're going to be working any trades with Kyle, but still they're very close friends. The Dolphins, Mike McDaniel. Remember Shanahan, McVay, and McDaniel all coached at Washington together. And now you have the Jags, Cohen and Gladstone both. I do wonder, though, if there's any animosity with the Jags owner. Maybe it's kind of silly, but you have to wonder if their owner, remember he was part owner of the Rams at one time and had an opportunity, could have possibly have been their owner, but then Kroenke exercised his option to own the team outright. I may be getting these facts slightly wrong, but Shahid Khan, he may have an edict, no trading with the Rams. I wouldn't be surprised if that, no, I'm being silly. I'm sure they're allowed to trade with the Rams, but at the same time, I suspect, there's a little bit of animosity still, Khan towards Stan Kroenke. I could be wrong, just guessing. And the last thing here for now anyways, Myles Garrett to the Lions. And This reminds me of Von Miller to the Rams, right? The Lions are so close to taking that next step. And is edge rusher what they need? Hey, if you're going all in, why not? As Daniel Jeremiah said, I would be willing to be pretty aggressive if I were Brad Holmes on that front, knowing that could bring a parade to my city. I would be aggressive and do whatever I had to do to try to make something like that happen. Now, Jeremiah, in the same article, the same interview, said that he's not so sure the Browns are interested in moving Myles Garrett, who might be the best defensive player in the league right now. But if they were going to move him, it would likely be out of the conference into the NFC, and the Lions just seem like the logical place. A team that needs some pop on defense, right? And Myles Garrett would certainly add that. Just something to keep your eye on. I know some folks have thought about bringing him, suggested he come to the Rams. Yeah, if you're doing an all-in thing, I suppose. I don't know if the Rams are quite there yet. I mean, when you have Jared Verse and Byron Young, you bring over Myles Garrett. Yeah, sure. Why not? Just think there's more important things to address right now than another edge rusher, even if he is perhaps the best edge rusher in the National Football League. That's all I got for now. Out here from Rams Up. We'll be back later this week with some more stuff, trying to get some guests on to talk draft. That's it for now. Thanks a lot.